This is Nate Lindquist from Nate Lindquist Results TV, and I'm excited to be introducing someone very special, a friend of mine, Paul Boynton, here today on the new first episode of Nate Lindquist Results TV. We've reformatted the show. We've got a whole new program, and we wanted to kick it off with an exciting guest, someone who can really make a difference. So you want to talk about getting results. Paul Boynton has gotten results. He's a well-known author and written Begin With Yes. He's made a difference in so many people's lives. He's been a friend of mine for many years. And Paul, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, it's great to be here, Nate. It took us a while to get our schedules to cooperate, and it's great to be here, though. So I'm looking forward to seeing where our conversation is going to bring us.
You know, I am too. I've got a pretty good idea where I want to start.
All right.
You know, I look back to having known you even before you wrote Begin With Yes, and seeing this driven person who was dedicated to his work and dedicated to his family. And now to look back at 2009, you wrote Begin With Yes.
Yep.
And I read the book in 2010 and was really moved by this idea that Paul was really giving me permission to put my passion and my purpose in front of me, in my way, and just saying yes to this idea that other people will resonate with what I'm doing, and things will start to fall into place if I give myself permission to take action on my passion.
Right.
So I was really moved by that, and if you could maybe give some insight, Paul, into the challenges that you had to face in your life where you wrote a book. I mean, I think when I look at someone who shares what I call powerful content that really resonates with so many people, you have to have, there's this, I call it the effortless evidence of your journey. You've been down this journey, and suddenly you've got this book.
Right.
We're going to make it sound simple. Suddenly you woke up and there's a book. So what was your journey, and how did you get to that place?
I think that the idea of writing a book was not actually something that I carried with me for a long time, but at some point, probably a couple of years before it was published, I recognized that I run a nonprofit and do a lot of public speaking, and that a lot of what I was speaking about was the power of our thoughts and the need to take action. And I reviewed all the speeches that I had made over the years, and I thought there's this common theme and there's a message here, and why don't I turn it into a book? And the book sort of took on a life of its own, I think, because sometimes we have to work really hard to make things happen, and other times they flow just more easily. I'm working on another book right now that's not flowing as easily as Begin With Yes, so I have had both of those experiences, and I don't think one is better than the other. They're just different experiences. But Begin With Yes sort of took on a life of its own, and I think you know, one of the interesting things is that I had the title of the book before I had done any writing, and
wow.
I'm working with another woman right now who's starting her book, and I sort of like that idea. If you can come up with a title that sort of captures the essence of what you want to talk about, it's sort of like what is the essence of you. It's really hard to sometimes articulate that, but if you challenge yourself a little bit, you can get to it very quickly, and then what the work becomes is something that's, I think, more authentic, and I think that's one of the reasons it's connected with so many people, is that it does come from an authentic place within me, and it's written by someone that has had a very unique, as are all of our journeys, and challenging at times, growing into myself process. And so we're all sort of trying to do the same thing, and I've always loved that image that if I reach out my hand to help somebody else, there's somebody ahead taking my hand to help me, and that sort of connectedness that we all are all in this together. You said something, and I'll take a breath in just a minute, but you said something that that really connected with me, and that I think it's for some reason, and I do not know the reason, maybe you do, but for some reason we've been taught that there's something self-serving or not quite right with following our passion, to the extent that many people that I talk to will tell me they don't even know what their passion is anymore. And so we've been somehow tricked into believing that what we're passionate about is not our priority, when I believe that our passion is actually tied to our purpose. And more importantly, I believe that everybody has a purpose, and the way to move in that direction, which is not only the opportunity that we have, but also the responsibility that we have, if we do have a purpose, is to honor that, is to pay attention to your passion. Yet you have to almost give people permission to, paint or dance or sing or whatever it is that they're passionate about.
Or write. Or speak.
Exactly, whatever it is. And
well, isn't it a case, Paul, perhaps that the outside influences are asking us to accommodate their requests? So a sense of responsibility, a sense of loyalty or commitment to taking care of our family. And so, I don't think either one of us has the complete answer, except for whatever answers we've come up with for ourselves. But my belief in what I've developed in the gifts formula dictates that if you're going to give your greatest gifts, there's a calling out there for all of us that if we hear it, if we glimpse it and sense it in any one of our six senses. So for me, the six senses are, sound, what you hear, what you see, what you taste, what you touch, what you smell, and then the sixth is what you know. There's this knowing that comes from inside. That knowing, when that sense is turned on, will recognize this compass, these signals, and I don't think our gifts really come out to believe that our passion is good enough, and until we heed that calling. I think you have to heed the calling. So I know a lot of people that are watching this movie probably have something they love to do, like dance, or write, or give something that they know they could give to solve a problem for other people, but they accidentally along the way thought that it was for themselves.
And I agree with all of that, Nate, and also that our passion is supposed to be fun too. And you mentioned dance, and I put a picture last night on my Facebook Begin With Yes page of me in my tap shoes, because I'm taking tap dance lessons. Now, I don't necessarily think tapping is my purpose, but I do think that it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I think that it sort of adds a dimension to who I am that makes me more interesting to other people, and certainly more interesting to myself. So I'm taking tap dancing, and I put on my post last night, what's something that you've always wanted to do that you haven't done yet? And people, now I've got, people responding to this saying, I wanted to learn to speak French, or I wanted to go to Europe, or I wanted to fly an airplane. And I believe all those things, for the most part, are still legitimate desires that you should be and can be working at realizing. I often tell the story, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be a trapeze artist. Well, I'm not going to be a trapeze artist. I do know that.
I thought that you were. No. You look just like...
My oldest son actually...
Skip the next question and move on to... I just thought for sure.
No, my oldest son actually gave me a trapeze lesson, so I've got that gift certificate waiting for me. But but what I actually do with those kinds of dreams is ask people, well, what about that excites you? And it's sort of the thrill, taking risks, performing. And so then you say, well, if I can't actually be in the circus, how can I capture the performing, taking risks, doing those kinds of things? And then when you ask yourself questions, I love the process of asking yourself questions, because you really, as you said earlier, you do have that knowing, and you do have most of the answers that you need.
I mean, isn't that all we do? To your point about asking questions, we think in questions. And there's only two ways to do it. We either ask good questions, or we ask not good questions. And to take it further, instead of good or not good, we ask productive, forward-moving questions, or holding us back questions. So, I think that your point about this idea of going after that dream or desiring something. Tell me what you think about this concept. If one of the questions could be, who would you have to become to to become a pilot or to learn how to fly.
Right.
And Paul, who would you have to become to be a trapeze artist? If you wanted to try it out, who would you have to be?
I would have to lose 20 pounds because they have a weight restriction, and they said you can't get on the trapeze unless you're under 200 pounds. So that would be the first thing I would have to do. But you raise a very good point, because I'm not going to probably be in the circus. I was reading an article, and I can't remember by who wrote it, but they said that there's something to be said for letting go of some things that clutter our sort of psyche and our world. And we all have, well, maybe not everyone, but I think lots of people have lots of things that they would like to do. If you really, if someone spent a little bit of time with themselves and said, what are some things you want to do, they could make a list. And this article that I read said, there's something to be said for letting go of some things, like because we can't do everything. I do believe that. And
well, you can't have it all, can you?
Right,
really?
You really can't, and nor should you really. It's right. You have to make some choice, and so the whole point of this article is, if you've always wanted to play the piano, but there are other things that are more important to you, then it's kind of liberating to say, you know what, I have always wanted to play the piano, but I'm going to settle for listening to beautiful, go to concerts and listen to somebody else play the piano, so that I can focus on writing my book or get something else done. Because I think sometimes we overwhelm ourselves with all the things that we want to do. And I'm a great believer in multitasking. I think you can do a lot and get a lot done, and you can move in a lot of different directions, but that belief has some limits, at least. And so letting go of something it's liberating. It frees you up. Well, I'm not going to do that this year.
It's such an important lesson. I think for someone, I think a lot of people watching the show are achievers. So they're people who line up, here's what I want to do spiritually, physically with my health. Here's what I want to do in my business. Or I've got this great new business idea. I mean, you didn't start a business or start a career because you were eliminating creativity. So, Paul, to your point about letting go of things, I think that's such a valid point. And one area that I focus on a lot is make a list of all the things that you'd like to do or that you're dabbling in that are great, and then pick your top 2 or 3 and turn your attention towards letting go of something that's great, so you can focus on something that's outstanding.
That's a great piece of advice. And sometimes what we want to focus on evolves and changes, and you don't get to where you're really going until you focus on what you think you want to pay attention to right now. And so it's like people who have this concept that they can plan out their lives or their careers, or I don't know anybody's career or life that unfolded by any pre-planned process. That's just not how life works.
It's like a flight across the country, right?
Exactly.
The 90% of navigation is correction.
Right. I mean, it's so true. It's like if I can't plan, a morning, how could I plan my life? And so relax about that too. And
did your morning go the way you planned?
No, not at all. It really didn't. I mean, a few pieces. I got to the gym, which was important to me, and then days many times take on a life of its own. And there's one concept that I really like, and I think it's important, is the concept of all of this in the context that's grounded in reality. I spoke to an attorney a while back who wanted to be a poet, and he had 3 kids, and he was earning a good living being an attorney, and he wanted to talk to me about abandoning his law career and becoming a poet. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. I said, why can't you do both right now, so that you can have an income stream? Because most poets are not, generating a lot of income. Why do you have to choose one or the other? And why can't you do both? Now, if he's unhappy being a lawyer, then I would be having a conversation with him about how could you earn a living and be happy. But I think that we have to be practical about our lives too, and I don't think there's anything wrong with creating a life that's pursuing your passions and living your dreams, and it's also grounded in reality and has a sense of, if you've got aging parents who need your help with caregiving, then that's a reality in your life that you can't ignore. And at least in my opinion, you can't ignore that and feel good about the rest of the things that you're trying to do. And
so to your point, Paul, about your conversation with the attorney, I think that's really interesting, because I think it speaks to the main subject matter here is there's people watching this who care very deeply about providing for their families and doing what they know is going to follow through on their commitment to caring for their children, to caring for their parents, to making an income and a living. And I know from talking to you in the past, we both had to face those challenges of making a change that required us to get uncomfortable, to change the way the living works a little bit along the way. But I think it's also, there's a sense of how you see the work that you're doing versus, so as an attorney, maybe you could share what your thoughts are, on how that gentleman could see his work as giving, and as maybe he could feel like a loving, caring, passionate, purposeful attorney, much like he would see himself as a poet, and he can take that part of himself that has that enthusiasm and break down what he sees as his attorneyness, and reframe it as, I'm this one person, I'm going to apply this, my true nature, to my attorney work. What would you say to that?
Well, first of all, there's no job I can think of where being creative wouldn't serve you well. And so, if you think about being a poet and creating something, if he would take that sort of passion about creating and see that as something that could complement his work as an attorney, and then that would be a beautiful thing. That's one of the games that we play with ourselves, I think, is that we create choices that we have to make that are artificial, that are not even real choices. It's like this man did not have to choose between being a lawyer or being a poet. He could be both. But as long as he stayed in that sort of conflict about needing to make a choice, he probably wasn't doing either one very well. But
that's a really good point.
It's we hold ourselves back and we create all these sort of artificial barriers. And so, grounded in reality, I would never want anyone to misinterpret that to mean that you shouldn't be pursuing your passion, because I believe that you should be pursuing your passion. But reframing, a lot of what I write about and begin with yes is how powerful our thoughts are. And at one point in my life I realized that my reality is different than your reality, and our realities is only a reflection of how we view the world. And so it's a given that everyone's walking around creating a reality for themselves. That's just how human beings are. So then I thought, well, if I'm making this stuff up, why don't I make up something that really works for me or that's more fun?
Perfect.
So it's like once you get that you're creating your view of the world in your own mind, and then you think that that's how the world really is. That's why people have so many communication problems. It's because your view of the world is different than mine. Why don't we start with, we know that we both view this world differently, and we also know that neither view is absolutely correct. That would be a great place to start. If you're having a...
Based on your desires, you have a view that shows that someone's either, not helping you get what you want or helping you get what you want. So we set these parameters around what something can mean, and then we live with it, right?
Like that brings up for me too, like so many people write, and because I'm always talking about make sure you have other positive people in your life that encourage you and challenge you, and a great way to do that, by the way, is for you to do that for other people, because then you're going to set that emotion. But so many people say to me, I've got really negative people in my life, and they're the husbands and wives and parents, and you can't necessarily move away from them, this is where the grounded in reality comes from. So, but what you can do is spend more time with other people who are more positive, who do encourage you. So you don't necessarily have to decide what to do with your negative spouse or your negative parent or friend. It's really, well, what could I do now to get more positive people in my life? And so you switch the emphasis from moving away from this bad energy to moving towards good energy. And then problem solved. Doesn't mean you don't still have negative people in your life. Who doesn't, right? So what?
So then what you're saying basically is start looking for the good in your life.
Absolutely.
Start attracting the good in your life by shopping for it, right?
Exactly.
Look for it, and then you're going to start to find it and probably maybe what I've experienced is you start to find it in the relationships you already have.
Absolutely.
And you show up differently to those relationships.
Yeah, imagine if you said, what do I like about this person rather than what don't I like? And we focus on the don't I like, and then everyone's all, upset.
Yeah,
well,
exactly. Well, and I'd like to be more healthy, so let me make a list of the areas that I don't like about my health.
Right.
And then, people watching this may not be aware, but our subconscious mind only hears problem with my health.
Right.
It doesn't hear that's good or bad. It says, give me more of the problem with my health, because you feel where your thoughts take you, right?
Right, exactly.
So it's such a valid point. What I'd like to do, Paul, if we could, if we had to take people to maybe maybe one important lesson, that if you could maybe leave them with a lesson and then what action they could take today. I'm a big fan of, speed to implementation.
Right.
So we've talked about this idea of who would you have to be, who would you show up as in your life. We've covered a lot of topics about creating what you want,
right,
and moving towards that. What would you share with people right now as sort of the major lesson that you'd like to leave them with? And then if you after that could share maybe one action item where they could start beginning with yes in their life, what would that look like to you?
I think probably the most important part of begin with yes. When I wrote the book, I thought yes was the most important word, but actually a friend of mine said, Paul, I think the most important